Welcome to Ars Libri, an everyman's journey through Western literature, where we explore the literary arts book by book, reading, retelling, and reclaiming our rich heritage. There's a book by a man named Poul Anderson, P-O-U-L Anderson. It's called Tau Zero, Tau, T-A-U. It's a Greek letter for T, essentially. Tau Zero. The basic premise of the book is that there's a starship that leaves Earth with 25 men and 25 women, and it has to reach a certain location. And it needs to travel near light speed for 5 years, and then reverse that and slow down for 5 years to get there. When it travels that fast, though, there are problems with time and space density and dilation, time dilation. Earth time is going to be going a lot longer than the time on the starship. As they're going, the ship gets damaged, and they're unable now to slow down. And the book explores the science problems, the science reality, the technical reality. It's called hard science, this book, this genre. So there's soft science is, we're not going to explain how all this happens. It just happens. Star Wars, for instance. Hard science is, they used the understanding of science at the time. It was written in the 70s. Some of it's dated, but it's still within its own framework, its own theories, it's coherent. Within that scientific explanation, how this would actually happen. So the issues in the book explore space travel going near the speed of light, how time dilates, how it expands and contracts, and the problems of separation from humanity and civilization and human connections, and what people do in crises psychologically, how they cope, and things like this. Before I get further into the book, I want to talk about why Christians, why conservatives, why traditionally minded people who are interested in reading Western heritage books should consider reading sci-fi books. None of these arguments are knocked down. I just think it's significant that all of our planets are named after Greco-Roman gods. The stars are named after Greco-Roman gods, the constellations. Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. Pluto's not a planet anymore, but Pluto. So space is tied to our mythological, literary past, our civilization. The constellations, Andromeda, Aquarius, Aquila, Aries, Boötes, Conker, or Cancer, the crab, Capricornus, Cassiopeia, Centaurus, Cepheus, Cetus, Corona Borealis. I'm going to name all of them, by the way. I just think this is cool. Delphinus, Draco, Eridanus, Gemini, Hercules, Hydra, Leo, Libra, Lyra, Ophiuchus, Orion, Pegasus, Perseus, Pisces, Sagittarius, Scorpius, Serpens, Taurus, Virgo. Every single one of them, Greco-Roman mythological names. And it's not just that they were named this, it's that thousands of years ago, people came up with stories about why they're named that. This isn't something that just happened. They were named long ago and given stories about how these two people loved each other so much that Zeus took mercy on them and killed them before they could suffer anymore, and then moved them into the stars, and that's where they've been forever since. So the stories from our Western civilization, our European civilization, are literally written into the galaxy. They're written into the universe. Western man has looked up at and pondered and dreamed of and named and measured and charted the stars for thousands of years. We are a people that are driven by boundlessness and wonder, adventure, discovery, expansion, an indomitable will to survive and conquer. If we stop exploring, we lose something of ourselves. That's the classical reason why people who are classically minded, traditionally minded, should consider sci-fi. For Christians, God created the stars and named every one of them. And they sing to him, the Bible says. Men who were astrologers saw the star of Christ and came and worshiped him. These are some Zoroastrian astrology guys reading the stars, and they saw the star and came and worshiped Christ. Christians think that's a nice little tale as part of Christmas. Consider what is being said here by the Bible. If somebody had made that up afterwards, it would be considered heresy. Astrology is demonic. We can't have any. It's in the Bible. It's literally in the Bible. And they were the first people to know, and they knew it through the stars. The Bible doesn't say astrology was dumb or false or fake. Some guys used their study of space, of natural science, which was called natural philosophy back then, and the stars to recognize the incarnation of the Son of God. Mythology was written into the stars for them. The true myth, as Lewis calls Christ's incarnation, the true myth was literally written into the stars. Space contained the myth. It foretold the myth, the true myth, the incarnation of Christ. The spirit of discovering mysteries of God's creation in space is like taking part in a real myth. And my argument is that the early, not all, but some of the early sci-fi writers incorporated this idea of getting into space as a means of getting back into mythology, into the mythical, into the enchanted fairy world. They explicitly said this. They didn't always do it well. This is the problem with sci-fi, I admit. The problem with sci-fi is, first of all, not all the writers are good writers. Not all the stories are good stories. Not all the morality is good morality. But they had this in their mind.
Yeah, I think Orson Scott Card does that a few times in several of his books with the way that he uses science. I guess it would be considered soft science because he doesn't get into the technicality too much. Mm-hmm. But he does use it to have the characters do things that can only be explained supernaturally. But it's via science and space. And
my third point here is that for sci-fi writers, technology is often a bridge or a portal or a vehicle to get man to the fairy world, to get man to the divine, to mystery, to myth. Technology is like a bridge. It's like a portal to another realm. Advanced technology are ideas like wormholes, or dimensional gates, or quantum devices, or light speed travel. Something happens. We have to plunge through. We have to go over the envelope or spin this thing really fast, and light happens, and bam, we're into a new world of mystery. There's a story called Hyperion by Dan Simmons, and there are these technological portals that basically allow people to encounter mythic, godlike entities. They move through something and encounter this. In Arthur C. Clarke's 2001: A Space Odyssey, there are monoliths, alien artifacts, and it acts as a technological catalyst to propel humanity toward a sort of cosmic transcendence and a divine encounter. There's so many, I could just go on and on and on and on. The movie Stargate from the 90s, where they travel through with Russell Kirk, I think. Somebody like that, yeah. They travel through a gate and they come out the other side, and they're in a new world of myth now. Strange things happen. Frank Herbert's Dune, The Spice.
Yeah.
It causes mythical stuff to happen.
Yeah, I think it's important also to say that it's not necessarily a world, like you're not entering heaven necessarily. It's just a realm of the immaterial. So there's both good and bad to encounter.
Basically, the idea is using technology to access realms of mystery and blur the lines between the rational and the spiritual, the material, scientific, and the unexplainable. There's a book actually by Carl Sagan called Contact, but the book was made a movie. Basically, there's an alien designed machine that the aliens transmit by radio waves back to Earth and the humans make it. And they put a human inside of it and it transports that human elsewhere to encounter the divine.
Oh, this is the one with Helen Hunt that you told me to watch that I haven't watched yet.
Yeah, that's what happens.
I need to go watch it.
Oops. But it's scientific rigor, and you can tell the people who are all part of it are people who have devoted their lives to studying science.
Right.
And everything is about being really smart and mathematical and precise and logical and charting the stars and listening to radio waves. And something divine happens because of it.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Snow Queen. It's like reason can only take you so far. At some point, you have to let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and embrace the supernatural.
There are lots of explorations that are interesting with sci-fi. Humanity's quest for meaning, a quest for thriving, striving, overcoming the dangers of human hubris, too much pride. Technology allows us to do too much, and we've gone too far, and it parallels things like Pandora's box or Icarus's flight. He gets too proud and he flies too close to the sun and he comes down and he dies. His wings melt. Okay. So I want to talk about the book now, Poul Anderson's Tau Zero. I'm going to go through it, not chapter by chapter, but almost. And I'll tell you when spoilers are coming, the listener, if you just want to stop listening. But I want to discuss the book because it's quite interesting. I want to say off the bat too, there are some morality issues in the book. They're not gross, they're not heated, but it's just almost sexually amoral. People kind of float in and out of relationships in the book. And again, there's no scenes there's nothing. You never see anything at all. They hug, they might kiss, and then it stops. That's it. So I appreciate that. However, there's just this issue. The story begins with two characters, a lady named Ingrid Lindgren and Charles Raymond. And Charles is the main character in the story. They two are waiting to be taken up to the ship, the Leonora Christine. Leonora Christine is the ship that's going to go on this voyage. And the story begins with Ingrid and Charles in a statue garden or a sculpture garden. And they're both looking at all the sculptures, basically fine art of human civilization. And they're discussing life on Earth, their backgrounds, and their reasons for leaving Earth. Why did they join this journey? The Leonora Christine and her crew are up in outer space. Everybody joins it. The ship is shaped like a dagger, which I thought was pretty cool. The crew is 25 men, 25 women. And the purpose is to extend life on another star system elsewhere. It's not clear whether life on Earth is dying or if it's just further colonization for the purpose of then colonizing again somewhere else. I think that's more of what it is. Kind of like what Elon Musk is thinking, except they're actually able to go do it. And some of the people on this ship have been star travelers or space travelers before. They've already experienced time dilation. So they've gone on a 10-year journey and they came back and 43 years passed on Earth. People that they knew are now old or dead. And so you have some of these people with experience. Others are astronomers, planetologists, botanists, all kinds of scientific people. None of them are just common folk like farmers.
I know, that's always the question I have. I'm like, do they know how to grow food? Do they know how to spin clothing and weave it and sew?
Every one of them are specimens of humanity. There are Mexican, Latino kind of a few people. There's a few Chinese named people. There are several who are from Sweden because apparently there was a nuclear war on Earth and Sweden was named the chief imperial ruler afterwards. Not because they won, but because we have to keep the peace. And who else better to do that than a bunch of Scandinavians, right? So anyway, it's kind of funny. That's what happens. They leave the Earth, they then leave Earth's orbit and they begin to travel away. And as they travel, the crew expresses an awestruck feeling at the universe and the feeling of leaving Earth behind. And leaving Earth behind, the psychological drama of it is everywhere in the novel. And that's the main thing that happens in the novel. Well, plus the action of the ship and the navigation and survival of what happens later. But the psychological drama, how you deal with breaking away from everything you've ever known, and the idea of not surviving or surviving, and you're the last ones. There are other main characters. So I said Ingrid Lindgren, she's the first officer. She's emotional, she's compassionate, she's often confused. There's Lars Tillander, he's the captain of the ship. He's a seasoned spacefarer. He's sacrificed a lot to travel in space. Everybody he knew long ago, they're gone. He's been in space traveling too fast, time dilation. People on Earth have gone by and they've died. Charles Raymond, he's the ship's constable, the policeman. He's skillful, he keeps order, he's a no-nonsense practical guy, he knows martial arts, he holds a gun, nobody else has a gun. He's the main character, but he becomes the leader, just by default. In the end, they end up calling him their king, although he's not king. He's not really a king. They just said, you have been our king in the way that you've maintained everything. When hope was lost, you pushed it back into us. Not because he was this motivational speaker, really. It was just, he was so determined not to die. And he says it in the novel. There's also a Chinese woman named Qiyuan Ailing. Those are the main characters. There are others. There are 50 total, but there's only about maybe 10 that are actually named in the book. I generally don't get into the technical details of things when I read books. Like a military novel, often it'll talk about the nitty-gritty details of the guns and stuff. And I really don't care about that. I just follow the story. And the same thing with sci-fi. But as a reader, you need to know that to follow what happens later on in the novel. So I'm just going to give a quick overview. The ship is supposed to continually accelerate to a certain point and then continually decelerate to a certain point. So you can always have a sense of gravity. And you're not squishing the humans as you go. They have a gravity, but it's not too much, not too little. And they get there in the most efficient time. The way the ship works is it has these big scoops that gather hydrogen in outer space as it flies. There's just matter out there, everywhere. People think it's empty, and there are some regions of space that are truly empty. But if you're inside of a galaxy, there's matter everywhere. It might be very, very little, but if you're traveling fast, you scoop up enough of it till your engines can use it. And it's hydrogen that this thing uses. Because there's infinite hydrogen out there, scoops can just gather more and more and more, and the engines just keep propelling. It's not that they go faster, it's that they just keep propelling. And because they keep propelling, you keep going faster. Do you see what I mean? Okay. It's not like an engine with RPMs, where to go faster, right, you need more RPMs.
So do these scoops store the hydrogen?
No, they use it immediately. They're using it.
Okay.
Continually using it and propelling itself. And if there's no hydrogen, maybe they have some stores. I don't know. They didn't talk about that. But that is a problem that arises later on. This is why I'm saying, if there's no hydrogen, they can't accelerate and they can't decelerate. Okay? So as the crew first travels, they're excited and they're buoyant and they're kind of hysterical. For a while, they do very, very human, earthy things. They cook, they swim, there's a pool, they make art. One lady, she paints scenes from Earth all over the ship so it doesn't look mechanical, at least parts of it. It's a huge ship, very huge. They conduct experiments, so some of the scientists there are going about their experiment with this instrument of navigation or predicting where we're going to go, or with plants and things. They're trying to make the ship itself a regenerative habitat. Pretty cool. They socialize, they have parties. As the years go on, because they're in there for a while, they have Halloween, they have Christmas, they have Covenant Day, which is their day of all going with each other. Raymond is already conditioning people at the beginning to be orderly. He's the guy that you would have found in an 1800s novel of exploration, where everybody on ship has a task and an order and a rank. That's how he's sort of making it, but he does it less objectively. There's a garden on the ship. Amid all the rumble and noise, there's a garden, and there's pieces of home and real life. It's quite nice. People have their own bunks, their own cabins. One thing that happens right away is there's a man named Johann Freiwald. Alof Nilsson and Norbert Williams. So these names are very Scandinavian, European, American. Norbert Williams is an American. He gets drunk. And
Thanks,
he comes,
America.
yeah, and he comes to these others, Johann Frywald and Alof Nilsson, and he demands that they toast his country's Independence Day. It's Independence Day, and nobody cares. And he's drunk though, and he's pushy. He's like, "It's my Independence Day." Finally, one of them says, "We're all going to keep the peace, and we'll toast your Independence Day. You know, we're good for you." But it just shows. In the beginning of the novel, they are all still tied to Earth and their country, and they're remembering it strongly. And they want to celebrate Independence Day. Norbert Williams is never going back to Earth. And as the story progresses, they're going to outlive Earth, essentially. But in their minds right away, it's still the same time. A minute on the ship is still a minute on Earth right now. There are others that talk about letting Earth go and letting go old ambitions and plans. Emma Glassgold is a woman who is a Christian. She wanted a traditional family. She wanted a big family. She wants lots of kids. She wants basically to make her little nest home. Chiuen Eiling is trying to help her let go of some of those things for now and maybe forever if we don't make it. You have to psychologically prepare yourself for this. And so the story is a lot of psychologically letting go and dealing with not being able to let go. Or when you're forced, when you're completely cut off, what do you do?
Yeah, I think it's important that they have that kind of a character in the story because part of colonization is going to be population.
Oh, they talk about it.
Yeah.
In the book, they talk about it. So as the story progresses, the crew becomes disoriented by relativistic travel. As they move faster and faster, there's optical distortions that I'm not going to get into just for the sake of it's too technically detailed, but like, just as an example, if light is a frequency, it's a wave. And just like when you hear a car coming towards you, it's and when it passes you, that sound changes because it's moving away from you now and the waves are longer. When it's coming towards you, it was shorter. Well, light is a wave, and when it's coming towards you, when it's shorter, it's blue. And when it's moving away from you, when it's longer, it's red. And the faster they move, the bluer things get in front of them and the redder things get behind them. And their ability to see stars and even talk with the earth, there's a moment when the last radio wave transmission comes in. This man hears it, he's a Russian. And it just so happened that one of the last transmissions was a Russian song that his mother used to sing him. And he just breaks.
Oh.
And he goes and he cries in this room. And he's this man's man. Mm-hmm. And he knows, because of the sound frequency wasn't that good, he knew this is the last one we're going to hear. Because of the way the frequency was, he knew, and the last thing I heard was the song my mother used to sing me back in Russia, on Earth. So sight and sound and communication, it's all signaling that they're being isolated in big space or big deep space or something. Now the idea of tau zero, as velocity nears the speed of light, time dilates, mass increases, and space contracts relative to the outside universe. Now, what that means is as you move closer and closer to the speed of light as an exponential curve here, okay? You have to get real close to it for this to start happening. As you move closer to the speed of light, the time that you experience goes by quicker than the time that the outside world, not going the speed of light, experiences. So a minute for you may be an hour for everybody else, or maybe 100 years for everybody else, or something, the faster you go. So tau zero is basically the moment you reach the speed of light. But in the book, you can never reach tau zero, you just get closer and closer and closer and closer and closer. And the closer you get, the harder it is to even go a little bit further. So it slows down and slows down, but you get closer. And every little bit that you do move, it's another 500 years or 1,000 years for every minute or second that passes, I don't know. The book doesn't give a detailed, this is how many years we've moved forward now, because they don't know. At some point, they don't know. Because something goes wrong in the book.
Yeah, that was something that was in Interstellar. It was all very calculated. Like at this planet, we have this much time. This much time has gone by on Earth, so we have to be very fast, you know.
Well, the thing is, I think this book Interstellar was probably based off of, or at least mostly based off of the theme of this book, because it's all about that entirely, except in Interstellar, there is some confusion about when and where they are, but you still get the feeling of things are mostly okay though. Whereas in this book, it is wildly not okay. It's not okay at all, and they don't know how far and how fast and when they are. They can kind of measure and guess, but also psychologically, like not everybody is psychologically whole anymore after a certain point because of what has happened. They realize what's happened. They all know we're probably never going to see anybody again, but they at least are going to exist in our lifetimes. Do you see what I mean? They're thinking, when we leave, it's going to take us 5 years to get halfway there and another 5 to slow down. So 10 years of our travel, it might be 30 years on Earth. So sorry, Mom and Dad, I'll never see you again. But at least when we get there, we can establish radio communication, and maybe I can talk with my brothers once again, and maybe my grandchildren will be able to come here, or my cousins. Sweden will still exist, America will still exist. But what happens is, in chapter 7, there's 23 chapters, the captain, Talander, and the engineers detect an obstacle, a nebulina moving into the future of their path, their future path, essentially. And people are like, why wasn't this calculated before? How could this? Well, it turns out that so far away in space, it's difficult to calculate when something fast moving and small was going to come across their path. They didn't see, it's a small nebula, it's a nebulina. You can't even really detect it. And it's moving really fast, like it broke away from something. And it's coming across their path, it's just gases, but they are not yet moving fast enough to just punch through it. But they're moving too fast to move around it in time. They detect it 24 hours out. It's not enough time to move around because it's 600,000 kilometers across or something. I don't know, it's huge. They can't just swing around it. Raymond, the main guy, learns of this, and it's interesting. This is the moment where he steps into the role that he was born for. He realizes immediately that he needs to begin sub-control of the ship to maintain order. It's not subversive at all. He's doggedly loyal and underneath the captain the entire time, the whole time. He's not a usurper, nothing, but he knows, I need to make sure everybody's going to be okay with this. And I need to ensure it because we need to survive. So he gathers everyone and tells the captain, Talander, to address them calmly, which he does. But Raymond, the constable, interjects during the meeting, and he plans for contingencies. He does all kinds of things in the background, like what happens if we suffer damage. So Talander basically thought, we either live or we die. Raymond was like, no, there's a third option. We suffer damage and there's a mutiny. You die, but some of us live. What happens then? So he immediately starts to think of contingencies in a survival situation, which, okay, maybe I'll never be in space travel, but this happened on ships in the ocean in the 1700s, 1600s, all the time, mutinies, armies. So he arises as the foresighted one, and he's stiff and formal in tone, but he plays critical roles from here on, Raymond. Okay, this is where the spoilers start. All right, just letting everybody know, if you don't want to hear any more of this book, you want to go read it yourself, it's worth reading. I would recommend you do it as an adult, not even teenagers, because of the amoral, amorphous, romantic, it's not even really romantic, just sexual relationships. Again, you don't see anything, you don't see it. No scenes are described, but people kind of float in and out of each other's lives. It's logical in their minds, like somebody needs comfort and the person comforts them. And that's what they do. Okay, so here's the rest of the book. They all strap in, they impact this mass, and they survive, but the ship is damaged. Constable Charles Raymond takes charge and organizes the crew and bullies them into action to prevent them from panicking. And he makes sure that the passengers are all okay, and he gathers them in this common area and starts assigning tasks to them to keep them occupied while the technical crew assesses the damage. So he gets them busy with stuff.
Is there a crew in addition to these 50?
No, this is it.
They are the crew.
They are the crew.
Okay.
Yeah. But there's some who are the space crew and some who are, this person is just a botanist, good for them, but they don't know about space. And some people, you don't even know who they are, they never show up. You maybe get about 10 or 15 names total.
Okay.
All right, basically, the engineers come back and say that the damage is that the decelerators are offline and they need to be repaired. That means we can't slow down. We can only accelerate. Well, you might think, well, why can't we just stop? They can't stop either. They can't just shut the engines off because the engine is such that, and the speed is such that there's radiation coming from all of this. The engines provide some kind of force field against the radiation. So if you shut the engines off at a certain speed and in certain places, you'll be bombarded with radiation and you all die. You'll be cooked. So they can't shut the engines off and they can't slow down. They can only accelerate now forever until they find a place where they can shut the engines off. Okay, the crew essentially realizes that they're doomed and they have to accelerate forever and they can't stop at the designated planet and they can't return. And at this moment, they start to discuss their future. They know that the ship's systems can sustain them for 50 years. Most of these people are in their 20s or 30s, so basically to the end of their lives. Ingrid Lindgren, the ship's first officer, she says it's like we're living in a flying coffin, isolated from Earth.
Oh, man.
And she says that the crew might choose to end their lives rather than endure this fate. But Raymond steps up again. He has this steely resolve. He challenges the crew to find the courage to continue living despite their predicament. This is what he does. In the face of hopelessness and death and no answers, he says, no, we will not die. We will not give up. We're going to move forward. Let's keep accelerating and we'll figure it out. That's what we're going to do. And he has this meaning and survival and purpose.
That's like in the movie Passengers. I don't know if you've seen that one. Basically, they're set into sleep so that they don't experience the time issues. They're put to sleep in these pods, so that they don't experience the time effects of space travel. But one of them accidentally is opened, and this is a journey that's going to take like 90 years or something like this. And it's like his life is over. And he can't handle it for a while, and he wakes up a woman. Like he basically steals her life. Yeah. And they're together just on this ship, and that's their life. Wow. Like they will not survive the return journey because it's like 90 years or something. So I guess that's similar to what these people are experiencing. Like this is our life now. Right. Yeah. Right. And the novel goes on to explore these two issues where you have the idea of surviving or dying and loss and disconnection from Earth, and you have this other reality of survival and technological scientific innovation and the will to overcome and not die, and the trouble of all the scientific problems of fixing the engines and time dilation and stars and galaxies and all that discussion. So Raymond goes and says that the captain should remain divinely aloof to maintain order. He creates a new way of structuring things on the ship. Captain Tillander is no longer to even talk to anyone. Raymond suggests this. He's not taking charge, he's just saying strongly, you need to remain on the captain's ship quarters area, the control room, the flight deck, and just issue orders to your first officer, Ingrid, and she will tell everybody what to do, and I'll enforce it. So no one questions your authority. You're divinely aloof. Ingrid is this compassionate person who's just telling you what the captain said, and if you complain, Raymond will punish you. He'll uphold order. And it ends up working, not perfectly, but it does work. There's some friction, but it works, and it's just an interesting exploration of psychological dynamics in a tightly controlled crew of people who can't leave each other and have to work together, like in a military unit or something, or in a business. How do you structure the authority? Raymond's strategy works. Raymond then also talks to the captain about a plan. It's a bold plan. He's the one with all the plans. His idea is if we can't slow down
because of the hydrogen and the atoms and the radiation, because we're going so fast. He says, let's find a region of space with extremely low gas density where we can safely shut the engines down and we don't need the force fields anymore. And then we can get out of the ship in our spacesuits and go repair the engines, the decelerators. So there's a solution. Let's just keep accelerating. Yes, we're going to overshoot our mark, but we can get somewhere where there's less mass, less matter, and shut everything down and go out and fix it. Well, the astronomical data says that such a region exists beyond their galaxy. Now, I know if you're reading this today, or if you're hearing me say this, it's like, okay, yeah, like Star Wars, you just go from one galaxy to another. That's not so easy in this book. In this book, you don't just go from galaxy to galaxy to galaxy. They don't have light speed travel. They can't just boof and go at light speed. It takes a long time to do this. The nearest area for this is 40 million light years away. Yeah, they have to modify the ship to even go that fast and go that far and get there in a soon enough time to where they're not old, just to get there. They have to go closer and closer to tau zero, in other words. Closer and closer and closer to light speed, which means time on Earth speeds up, but not for them. They think that if they can do this, it'll take about 2 years' time to get where they need, though how many years would pass on Earth, they don't know. They're guessing thousands of years of time. It's extremely risky because they could hit another dense cloud of gas and destroy everything. But Raymond says, what else have we got to lose? There's nothing else we can do. This is the only solution. So the idea is to get outside of the Milky Way into an area of less dense mass, repair the engines, and then go to another cluster somewhere else and try to find a habitable planet elsewhere.
Oh, not the original.
Not the original,
okay.
Because it's too far away at that point.
Okay.
So the crew is initially stunned at this, but then they begin to rally around this new hope. They initially are think about it. When they first left Earth, they were extremely happy, and then they had this upset, and they're demoralized, we're going to die. They don't die, they're relieved. And people are crying, and people are vomiting, and people are celebrating, and they do all kinds of things. This is what the book says. There are different ways everybody copes with stuff. They turn to religion, they turn to alcohol, they turn to drugs, they turn to despair, they turn to work, they just busy themselves in work, they turn to love, or they turn into survival. We're going to survive. And it's those people who have the will to move forward. I'm not saying religion's not right here, but I am saying it's the survival people who are, no, we will not die. There's still a chance. We're not dead. Let's figure something out. Come on. That's the guy that leads everybody else forward, even some of them begrudgingly.
Yeah, I could see how religion would do the opposite. It's like, well, I'm safe, we're good.
Actually, a few said that, but it wasn't, I don't think he's critiquing religion in this very much, at least not strongly, because it's not defeatist and nobody says, oh, to hell with your prayers. Nobody says that in the book.
Well, I guess we see that though on Earth. There are people who think that way.
Oh yeah,
it's
of
like,
course.
why try to solve the problems here? Like, we're not of this world anyway. We're
just
on
passing
our way
through.
out.
Right? We're going to die anyway.
Right.
This is what God wanted. So they chart a new course and make subtle calculations, and the book is full of all the science behind it, and it's really interesting. Their speed increases, which causes the time outside the ship to go by faster and faster and faster. And the crew, at this point, all of the crew, their characters alter from one of a buoyant and jubilant and confident, these are specimens of humanity, all of them, to now one of sometimes despair, sometimes shrinking back and no longer able to do their role. Even the chief engineer, Raymond has to go talk to them and say, look, you have to do this. We're relying on you. And he says, you only want me for my mind. You don't want me for who I really am. He's breaking down. And he has to get women involved to cheer this man back up somehow. And that's where some of the love stuff comes in, you can see. Raymond gets a physical exercise plan going, which has some effect, but it doesn't work for everybody. Some people bury themselves in work of charting a new course, but the problem is once they find the new course, their work is over and they have nothing else to do now, and they're just kind of morose. So it's all these psychological intricacies of how do you deal with suffering, with loss, with setback? How do you react when someone punches you in the face? Or life punches you in the face? Chapter 12, there's an interesting quote here. I want to read it. This is one of the engineers speaking. He says, "At present, I believe it is about Anno Domini, the year of our Lord, 10,000 at home, give or take several centuries. And I remember that the century mark was expected to be the great psychological hurdle for us. In spite of that, these mounting dates have meaning. They make us absolute exiles, already, irrevocably. No longer simply our kinfolk must be extinct, our civilization must be. What has happened on Earth? Throughout the galaxy? What have men done? What have they become? We will never share in it. We cannot." The year is now 10,000, he's guessing. And after this, there's another time where they guess it's probably a further way off, but they stop guessing at some point because they really don't know.
What I think is a neat feature of science fiction sometimes is that when you have somebody in a situation like this, well, Earth is still going on, and they had the technology to send these people out. There's always this hope of like, well, perhaps they will develop technology to come out and somehow surpass what they've already accomplished, you know, so that like they might not be cut off forever.
But this is not the case because they're speeding up and getting closer and closer to the speed of light. Time outside is speeding up fast and fast and fast. Raymond in chapter 12 also explains his principle of organization. He says, "It works in the military. I've been applying it here. Humans want a father-mother image, but at the same time they resent discipline. You can get stability in this way. The ultimate authority source is kept remote, godlike, practically unapproachable. Your immediate superior is a mean person who makes you toe the mark and whom you therefore detest. But his own superior is as kind and sympathetic as rank allows. I'm the traditional top sergeant, hard, harsh, demanding, overbearing, inconsiderate, brutal. Not so bad as to start a petition for my removal, but enough to irritate, to be disliked, although respected. That's good for the troops. It's healthier to be mad at me than to dwell on personal woes. Lindgren, the first officer, the kind lady, she smooths things out. As first officer, she sustains my power." This is Raymond talking, the policeman, the constable. "But she overrules me from time to time. She exercises her rank to bend regulations in favor of mercy. Therefore, she adds kindness to the attributes of ultimate authority." Just an interesting discussion of authority in this situation. The value of the book, I think, is, yes, there's adventure and there's the spirit of overcoming, but there's also the dynamic of psychological survival and authority and working together. That's also in the book very strongly.
That is so interesting because it seems to somewhat answer Machiavelli's question of is it better to be loved or feared? He's saying both. You need a separation of powers, one for each.
Yeah.
You know, that is so interesting. And then a third.
That's good.
It's that three, you know, then the third who's like the god
aloof
of it all. Yeah.
Right. He's aloof.
So neat.
Yes. Yep. Something interesting happens in the story at this point. People are on the ship now for a while. They've been there for a while and they're starting to think, I'm aging. We're not getting any younger. If we ever land on a planet, we're the last humans at this point. Humanity is dead. We're the last ones. Our original mission was to extend life on another planet. And if we're the last ones, we have to have children. There's only so much food. There's only so much regenerative habitat stuff on this spaceship. And none of us are married. We were supposed to find partners as this trip went on, or as we landed, we're supposed to find partners and commit afterwards. Well, one woman named Margarita has this idea, and they had a doctor on board, and he was giving the women and everybody anti-aging pills to try to, I don't know exactly what they did, they didn't explain it, but I'm guessing it just extended their life or delayed decay so that they could bear children for longer. But he was also giving them something to stop them from bearing children while on the ship. Now she is a Christian, Margarita is a Christian, and she wants to live a normal lifespan and have babies. So she stopped taking these anti-aging pills. She wasn't taking them. And she also went into the doctor's office and slipped her little signature on the form that said she already had her annual injections to not make her have babies. I'm just going to leave that there for now. Something happens later, which I'm sure you can conclude. Okay? But it's an interesting plot detail. There's all kinds of things happening in the story.
So you're saying that they decide, aside from Margarita there, you say they decide that they should have children?
I'm saying that one lady...
Oh, okay. Because I was thinking, like, that would be an interesting decision. You would think that they would be saying, like, well, this is the end. We shouldn't bring
Most
children.
of them thought that way. Everybody thought that way.
Okay.
Absolutely everybody thought that way.
Okay.
People are thinking we shouldn't even live anymore ourselves.
Wow.
There are a lot of people in despair.
Okay.
Absolutely in despair. Relationships that were already forming are now being broken off because people just can't live anymore. There's one lady, the glass gold lady, she went into the movie sort of room, but it's more of a helmet that you wear. It helps you see things and dream about stuff you used to see long ago. But there's also movies you can watch. She just goes in there and binges on stuff.
Wow.
And Raymond has to go in there and rip it off of her and say, we need you to wake up and come back and do things over here because you're valuable to us. And so he has to get people back into life. There's so much possibility of people just dying. And Margarita, because she's a Christian, wants to have babies, not just live, but have babies.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I don't think that Poul Anderson meant this to be a win for Christianity.
Yeah.
Because the book it's evolutionary time frames. It's all kinds of weird sexual relationships. Again, you don't see anything, but it's there. But the Christian lady wants to live. Now, another thing starts happening. Others in the ship begin to invent new technology to help them see planets and stars and galaxies at the ship's increased speeds. Things are happening so fast, remember, that you can't see things normally anymore, and they have to invent new screens and sensors on the ship to find stuff and see things out there. So they're actually having to solve problems that didn't exist before they started going. So these astronomers and these engineers and others, they're actually improving the ship's ability and the crew's ability to survive as they're going. They're not just sitting back and letting things happen and using what they have and just sitting there and thinking, well, this is all we got. I guess we can't do anything. They're actually doing what I would call real science, which is they're inventing stuff that never existed before to solve problems that never existed before.
Yeah.
So there are several problems in the book. The first one is when they hit the nebula and they can't slow down. And Raymond says, well, let's speed up, let's keep going, and get to a place where we can slow down, where there's less density and mass, we won't be radiated to death. Well, once they pop out of their galaxy, they finally get out of their galaxy, the ship's engineer, his name's Boudreaux, which I thought was pretty interesting, he says there's a new problem. The space where they are drops off more slowly. The density of the space drops off more slowly than they thought. So they have to go further than they thought before they can repair the ship. But once they get out in the middle of nowhere, there's so little density of mass anymore that the engines won't have enough energy, enough fuel to do anything other than keep floating in the direction they started in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because of the nature of the engines, they scoop up hydrogen whenever there's density in the universe, and they use that to fuel themselves. We can get out there where there's nothing and repair, but then there's nothing. And we can't fire these things back up until we hit another density area, which is basically galaxies. We have to be within it. And the next galaxy from where we are right now is about 100 million light years away. That's how far away it is.
And it took them 2 years to reach this one that's 40 million miles away, going super fast.
Right. And 10,000 years have already gone by on Earth. So now they're thinking, we have to leave our galaxy. We left Earth, and then we left the time of humanity. Humans are gone, perhaps, we don't know, but we think they're gone. Like, there's no more humanity. And then we left the planet that we were supposed to land on, and then we left our galaxy. We're gone, we're out the galaxy now, we're moving away. And now we're never gonna be able to come back. This is the thing. We have to go to the next galaxy before we can even get fuel again. And then what are we gonna do when we get there? It's gonna take us a long time to get there. Raymond comes to the front again in this instant. Raymond comes to the front again in this instance. And he says, we should push through and speed up then, before we fully get out of this present. Because they're out of the galaxy, but there's still density and fuel. He says, let's speed up. And they're like, what? He says, let's speed up and get to the next galaxy as quick as we can. And they're thinking, why? And he says, He's accepting the risks of journeying through an area where there's no fuel and pushing through dense regions afterwards, because to him it says it's a psychological necessity for the crew's survival to just rail against an indifferent universe and be strong and do the best and only thing we can to the best of our ability. That's what we have to do. And so the starship, Leonora Christine, goes beyond the Milky Way. It just pops out of the Milky Way into this void. And it goes through all kinds of sparse regions, and it's accelerating to extreme velocities. It's increasingly accelerating the whole time, as long as there's density. And it's trying to leave that eventually. And it gets to the place where they can repair things. One of the things that they see while they're moving this fast at this point, by the way, it's kind of eerie. They see a rare, ancient red dwarf star with planets. That means that this sun is billions and billions and billions and billions of years old, older than the universe was when they started. So the universe, according to this evolutionary timescale, it's like 13 billion years old. For a red dwarf star to exist with planets means that this thing must be like 20 billion years old or something. Much older, much, much older than the whole universe. And the engineers who saw it, the astronomers who saw it, didn't say anything. They marked it and noted it, but they didn't say anything because they're like, what? How fast of time has gone by? They start to wonder. Then they encounter another problem. They came out of the Milky Way and they're coming through empty space, and they get out and they repair the engine. So now they can decelerate. Great. Now let's just wait till we get to the next galaxy and then we can slow down, right? Well, they made some new calculations and realized we've been going so fast that the next galaxy isn't wide enough for us to slow down in completely and stop and turn around. All we can do is slow down and then pop out the other side and continue floating then when there's no more fuel. And we'll float so slowly on the other side that by the time we get from that galaxy to the next one, it'll take too long and we'll die. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I follow. So I guess they can't just...
So the only thing they can do, again, for the third time, is speed up.
Oh my goodness.
So that's what they say. Like, if we can't slow down in the next galaxy enough to stop and then turn back to get back to the Milky Way, all we can do is speed up, because we're going to pop out the other side and be going 5 miles an hour, I don't know, but we're just never going to be able to stop because there's no more fuel. Let's use the next galaxy and speed up even further. Wow. Maybe we'll find an inhabitable planet somewhere in the universe, because they're going so fast at this point that they can get from galaxy to galaxy within a few months' time or a few weeks' time. I forgot how far. Again, it's not like Star Wars or something where you can just pop around real quick, and survival is not an issue. Survival is the issue here, and time. Mm-hmm. And everybody's growing bored and there's nothing else to do and the food's not good and people aren't celebrating the holidays anymore and the work is finished and everybody's sitting around and the movies are old and people are singing old songs that are really morose. It's just decay among the crew, and Raymont's trying to keep them up. And so his idea again is, let's push through. One of the engineers says that if the ship keeps accelerating through these galactic areas, lowering its tau, which means getting closer to the speed of light, it might encounter a bunch of galaxies, like a constellation of galaxies with so much density that it could slow down eventually. But then what do we do because we're so far away? That's another question.
Let's hope there's a planet somewhere.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is part of chapter 18. I just want to read it. The reaches of space-time cannot be numbered by man's familiar integers. They cannot even be honestly counted by orders of magnitude. Leonora Christine spent most of a year getting within 1% of light velocity. The time aboard was about the same, because the value of tau only began to drop sharply when she was nearer the speed of light. So it only happens at the very end, like an asymptote, exponential curve. During that initial period, she covered half a light year of space. Took a year to go half a light year of space, approximately 5 trillion kilometers. Thereafter, the decrease became constantly more swift. Aided by the higher acceleration now possible, she required somewhat under 2 more years in her own measure to get about 10 light years from Earth. That was where she met her grief, the nebula, after 2 years. In her own time. The decision being made to seek the next cluster of galaxies, she must gain such a speed that she could bridge the distance in a tolerable shipboard time. At maximum acceleration, a maximum which increased as she traveled, she swung halfway around the Milky Way and into the heart of it in little more than a year. According to the cosmos, it took better than 100 millennia. 100 millennia. To go from where they were on Earth into the heart of the Milky Way and then spit out of it. But into the heart of it, it took 100 millennia. But on ship, it just took more than a year. So not only is everybody dead, but the universe itself is starting to change. In the Sagittarian clouds, she gained a speed which brought her out of her native galaxy in a matter of days. These clouds had enough dust and fuel in them. Every bit of matter becomes fuel at a certain speed, apparently. And those clouds gave her a boost of speed real fast. Then her people discovered that the vacuum between the star groups, where their plans were aimed at, was not hardly enough to stop and slow down and turn around. They must go beyond the entire cluster of galaxies. In intergalactic space, Leonora Christine remained able to pile on speed. It took her weeks to fare a couple of million light years to a chosen neighbor galaxy. Spanning this in hours, she filled herself so full of kinetic energy that she crossed a similar distance in days. And presently she used a week or so to depart from her original cluster and reach another, through which she had passed quite rapidly. She coasted across the almost total emptiness of space. Meanwhile, her engineers fixed the damaged unit. Although without acceleration, she needed only a pair of her own months to lay 200 or 300 million light years behind her. The accessible mass of the whole galactic clan of galaxies, they call it a clan, that was her goal proved inadequate to break that velocity. So she got to the next galactic clan of galaxies and she couldn't slow down because she was going so fast. So Raymont's solution was speed up. Therefore, she didn't try. Instead, she used what she swallowed to drive forward all the faster. She traversed the domain of this second group of galaxies with no attempt at manual control, simply spearing through a number of its member galaxies in 2 days. On the far side, again in hollow space, she fell free. She popped out of that one, and she's no longer accelerating, just floating until she hits another one. The stretch to the next available cluster of galaxies was on the order of another 100 million light years. She made the passage in about a week. 100 million light years. So if I'm watching this, it takes 100 million years. But for the people on board, it was a week. When she arrived there, of course, she spent the star stuff, the fuel, she found to force herself still closer to the ultimate speed. So another problem emerges, which is they're going so fast that time is passing by so fast that the universe itself is aging, the entire universe. Before I talk about that, something else significant happens. Margarita finds out she's pregnant. She doesn't find out. Her man finds out and tells Raymont, who's supposed to keep order, and arrest her, which he does not do. And her man looks at her and she says, "Nobody's gonna kill my baby." And there's this scene where she very strongly defends life against abortion. She explicitly says, abortion is murder. And I'm not gonna kill my baby, we're not gonna do that. And Raymont agrees. And there's something important that is said here. Raymont, very coolly and practically, by the way, he says, "I suppose we should let it live, let the baby live. And we can think about how the ecosystem can stand another human being here. I'm sure we can all do that, et cetera, et cetera. And he says, maybe we should allow a relaxation of the rules and have a very limited number of births be authorized. We'll compute how many the ecosystem can stand and let the women who want draw lots. I doubt many will, but the rivalry shouldn't be great. Having infants to coo over and help take care of might well relieve certain tensions. Briefly, his voice rose. Also, by God, they're a pledge of confidence and a fresh reason to survive. Yes, babies are a reason to survive and live, and a confidence in the future. Having babies is confidence that we're going to survive, that things are tough, then we're struggling, but we're gonna work and move forward and live. That's what it's saying. If you think all is dead, why get married? Why have babies? Why even have a mate or a spouse? But Marguerite, the Christian, fooled everyone, cooked the books, and got pregnant. Of course, she wasn't married, but she got pregnant, okay? And she's defending her baby from death. She says abortion is wrong, it's evil, this is life within me. And then Raymond says, you're right, and it will bring life to us all and hope in the future.
I'm still tripping over what you had just said, though, that they're going so fast and that whenever they have a problem, the solution is to go faster.
Yeah.
That continues to be the solution. But in doing that, the solution itself becomes the problem. They're going so fast that they're going to run out of time in the universe.
Yeah. I can't explain the book. This is not the most fantastic, wonderful book I've ever read, but there are moments when it rises to greatness. One moment is when they break out of the Milky Way and realize they can't go back because the space is too small for them to turn around in the next cluster of galaxies. Mm-hmm. And they decide to go faster. And the image in my mind, Captain Tillanders, he's not the most manly man. He's worn, his crew is breaking. Raymond is there, he's not heroic, but all of them together combine and they decide, no, let's go faster to the next one and figure it out and invent new things and will to live. And then let the baby live. Let's look to the future. We're gonna do it and go faster. And they're busting through, just in my mind, the Milky Way is spinning there in space and this little ship busts through and it's just bold and daring and awesome. I can't help it. I'm like, this is great. This is great. Like, yes, go. And they're busting through all these clouds and nebulas and the ship kind of creaks and moans and has these sounds that are weird and they see strange things and they have to invent new instruments to actually see anything at all. That moment was great. And when they come through the next cluster of galaxies and they bust through that one, just seeing that in the mind's eye and having them do the calculations of how long the time span is and how fast they're going, it just makes you feel small and insignificant. And these men are far beyond the end of humanity. Humans have died out hundreds of millions of years ago at this point. And nobody's left, and there's nothing left. And they think, we have to keep going just because we have to shake our fist at the universe. Not in defiance of God, though. That's not it, because there's actually some humility before God for everyone in this story at various points. So it's not like, screw you, divine being. They're not like that at all. It's just to the opposition of all the problems that face them, they don't bow down. Ultimately, they don't. Some of them do. Ultimately, all of them, they don't. In fact, there's a quote in chapter 19 from Ingrid. Raymond walked in on her. Raymond is the constable. Ingrid is the first officer. And they're talking about the future and survival and the last festival that they tried to throw and how the universe itself is getting older, it seems. And how far will we go? Will we get to the end of the universe? I mean, what happens if this thing just keeps aging? What happens? And she says, have you ever read Moby Dick? That's us. We've pursued the white whale to the end of time. And now the same question. What is man, that he should outlive his God? They hugged in that moment. The ship went through another storm shaking because they travel through galaxies and things, and they may hit some matter, but they're going so fast that they just punch through it. I'm not sure how this is physically possible, but they could, at this point, hit a star and they just go right through it. They're going so fast, and it shakes the ship and stuff, but they just busting through it. It shakes the ship. At that moment, Raymond hauled himself back to the deck. Teeth gleamed in his visage. No, he said. And if you read the book, you understand what he's saying. No, I won't die. No, we won't. We're going to keep going. It's this resolve that he has. At this point in the book, we're at the end, and what happens is that the cosmos is starting to die. I told you earlier that they looked out the window and they saw the red dwarf star with planets, which is extremely rare for a red dwarf star to have planets, apparently. I don't know. But now, everything that they see is red. It can't just be the speed that they're going. Everything is red. All of the galaxies are red, and they're all moving in a certain direction. The universe is contracting, essentially. It's no longer expanding. And I know in some conceptions that the universe isn't expanding. It's a part of the Big Bang theory, that everything boomed out and it took 300 million years for it to expand, and then gravity shrinks it back and it comes back to a center again, to a singularity, and then it explodes again, and this happens every 2 trillion years or something. But they're at the point now in that scheme, okay, you don't have to believe in it just to kind of enter the world, right? Kind of like Lord of the Rings. You can enter the world, okay, it's going to contract in like 500 billion years. Well, they don't know what time it is. All they know is things are contracting. In every way we see things, it's contracting.
So that's what tau zero is.
No, tau zero is the speed.
Yeah, but there's a sense, like, have they hit it? Have they touched tau zero yet?
No.
Yeah, so that's my point. So tau zero is the end of the universe. Tau zero is the point at which they cannot go faster because there is no time.
I see.
That's tau
good.
zero.
That's good. Now they start to face the prospect, how do we survive a dying universe? Mm-hmm. Is it even possible to survive a dying universe? What happens? Again, Raymond takes the stage and he argues that the outlook is grim, but we should reject despair. Our survival chances aren't zero, and he proposes a bold plan. Speed up.
I didn't see that
Yeah,
coming.
I know. But it doesn't sound so cheesy in the book, though. When you read the book,
Yeah.
I know me explaining it's like, aha, speed up again. But in the book, there's a gravity to it all. Mm-hmm. And he has to argue his point to keep the ship moving at relative speeds and circling the universe as it's pulling. So think of like a drain circling, everything's coming in, and they're trying to bust out, but they're moving with the tide, so to speak. And they have to try to stay on the outskirts of the spiraling universe.
I see.
Far enough away not to get sucked in, but near enough to keep gathering energy so it can keep speeding up and avoid it.
Okay.
So you're basically like surfing this wave that's being sucked underneath the ocean.
To stay within the contraction that's happening.
Yes, it's basically like Scylla and Charybdis.
Wow.
Yeah, except it's universal and it's going near the speed of light. And hundreds of millions of years, trillions of years, I don't know, are passing as this is happening. And they're going to try to survive the collapse and the emergence of the next cosmic cycle. That's what he says. And again, it doesn't sound crazy in the book. It sounds like he's a very blunt man. He's the policeman. And he hears what the scientists are saying and he says, well, why can't we do this? And everyone's like, well, that's ridiculous. And he's like, what other choice do we have? He emphasizes also when he says this, that they have a duty to humanity and to future generations to keep fighting. He says this on purpose. We have to do it for the sake of mankind. This is the last of us. We have to go down, he doesn't say it like this, but like surfing the wave, the drain wave, the cosmic storm. And I'm thinking, this is like the ultimate thing. This is the ultimate. I've surfed, I've flown in planes, I've done all kinds of extreme stuff. Surfing the last, like driving the ship at light speed as the universe is collapsing in on itself. And a lot of people want to watch it because the scientists and things, they want to see the singularity. They want to see it because it's a theory. They just want to live long enough to see it. And the Christians want to live long enough to see the new birth.
Yeah.
Because they think, I want to see creation. I want to see what creation looks like. That's how they talk about it. The next thing that happens is Margarita's baby is born amid the cosmic storm.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
And it's a she. Baby's a she, a girl. She's born amid the storm.
The birth of the next cosmic cycle.
The birth of the next cosmic cycle. And the way he describes the cosmic collapse is pretty good. I want to read this part because he's describing the collapse of the universe, and it happens quicker and quicker and quicker, like an exponential curve. The baby's born, the spaceship is kind of bumping and roaring outside, and things are not good. They're trying to get to the edge of things as everything is collapsing and contracting. Leonora Christine, the ship, shouted, shuddered, and leaped. Space flamed around her, a firestorm. Hydrogen aglow from that supernal sun which was forming at the heart of existence, which burned brighter and brighter as the galaxies rained down into it. The gas hid the central travail behind sheets, banners, and spears of radiance, aurora, flame, lightning. Forces unmeasurably vast tore through and through the atmosphere, electric, magnetic, gravitational, nuclear fields, shock waves bursting across megaparsecs, tides and currents and cataracts. On the fringes of creation, through billion-year cycles, which passed as moments, the ship of man flew. I think that's awesome. In my opinion, that paragraph he was at his most poetic in that moment, describing.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It's like man meets God.
Just the light. If you could just read that paragraph and dwell on it in your mind for a minute. Galaxies bursting across like comets, whole galaxies like comets, leaving a trail of light behind them, zooming towards a center that's growing, and lightning that are trillions of miles long or something shooting out from it. They're watching it, and on the edge of it all, this cosmic hurricane, the ship of man is riding on the edge of it. And Raymond was driving it, by the way. The captain called for him to come drive because the captain couldn't anymore stand it. And Raymond got up and stood in the seat. Not because he was a great driver, it was just he was calm. And he stood there with the captain and drove the ship.
If you can keep your head when all else about you are losing theirs.
Yeah, that's exactly. Raymond was the man that Kipling talked about in the poem If. There was no other word. It flew. As far as humanity was concerned, or the most swift computing and reacting of machines, she fought a hurricane, but such a hurricane as had not been known since the last stars were melted together and hammered afresh. They must hold Leonora Christine well away from the glowing monoblock, the center, whose radiation would otherwise surely kill them. At the same time, they must stay where the gas was so dense that tau could continue to decrease for them. They could continue keeping up speed and increasing in speed, turning these final phoenix giga years, billions of years, into hours. And they must keep the ship riding safely through a chaos that, did it ever strike her full on, would rip her into nuclear particles. No computers, no instruments, no precedents might guide them. It must be done on instinct and trained reflex. Gradually, Raymond entered the pattern until he could steer alone. The rhythms of rebirth were wild, but they were there. Ease on starboard, vector at 9 o'clock low. Now push thrust, brake a little here, don't let her broach. Swing wide of that flame cloud if you can. Thunder brawled. The air was sharp with ozone and cold. The screen blanked. An instant later, every floor panel in the ship simultaneously turned ultraviolet and infrared, and blackness plunged down. Those who lay harnessed alone throughout the hull heard invisible lightnings walk the corridors. Those in command bridge, pilot bridge, engine room, who manned the ship, felt a heaviness greater than planets. They could not move, nor stop a movement once begun. and then felt a lightness, such as their bodies began to shake asunder, and this was a change in inertia itself. Basically, they felt a strong pull and suddenly it let go. A change in the inertia itself, in every constant of nature as space-time matter energy, underwent its ultimate convulsion. For a moment, infinitesimal and infinite, men, women, child, ship, and death were one. It passed so swiftly that no one could tell if it had been. Light came back and outside vision. The storm grew fiercer, but now through it seemed distorted so that they appeared to be blue-white fire drops that broke into sparks as they flew, fountaining off in two huge curving sheets. Now came the nascent galaxies. The monoblock had exploded. Creation had begun. Raymond went over to full deceleration. For the first time in the whole novel, they're decelerating. Leonora Christine started slowly to slow, and she flew out into a reborn light. So basically the end is they go and find a new planet. And they do it by following the trajectory of the bursting stars. The stars are now, and new galaxies are bursting out from the center, and they take a course and go chase one and slow down and catch up to it eventually and slow down. As it's moving outward, and so are they. They're able to slow down at a rate that gets them there in enough time. One interesting last feature is they find the new planet and get on it, and Raymond and Ingrid are lying under a tree just talking, and a being sort of like a dragon flies over them as they're talking. Nothing else happens really as they're just talking, but I thought that was interesting. It's the beginning of the new world, the new creation, and these two are sitting under a tree and a dragon flies over.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Then the story ends. That's it. Nothing else happens. They're talking, populating the new world. Let's, move on. How happy are we? And starting over. And then a dragon flies over. The book was pretty good. I'm not sure if I'll read any more from this guy. It was recommended to me by a friend. I read sci-fi maybe once or twice a year, actually, just of my own pleasure. But this one was pretty good, except for the amoral love stuff. Yeah, it wasn't gross or heavy-handed. I would say if you're an adult, read it, but not anybody younger.
Honestly, that goes for a lot of sci-fi.
Yeah, You're right. Sci-fi, there's a lot that's bad and a little that's good. But the good stuff, in my opinion, is worth reading. Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying this content, please consider supporting the show by subscribing at arslibri.substack.com. Your support enables me to produce this content. Subscribers also get bonus episodes, detailed book lists, and more.